Here's Wikipedia's definition of Gays Against Groomers is an American far-right, anti-LGBT organization known for protesting against gender-affirming care for minors, including at hospitals that provide it, against LGBT representation at schools, and against drag queen story hour events. Some people may say these are good things. If you call that far right, you take that far right out, many parents would say these are things I'm concerned about. A spokesperson for the LGBT advocacy group, GLAAD, has claimed that the group uses the slur groomer to characterize LGBT people as pedophiles. GAG has hosted anti-LGBTQ rallies alongside other far-right and anti-LGBTQ organizations such as Moms for Liberty, which has been attended by Proud Boys. And then it goes into explaining how Jamie Mitchell started it, who before what she did, and how it led to libs of TikTok, and those videos went viral, et cetera, et cetera. Having said that, thank you for being on the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
From your perspective, what does Gays Against Groomers do?
Yeah, so we're a coalition of gay people that do not stand for the sexualization, medicalization, or indoctrination of children through the LGBT umbrella. And for instance, Wikipedia likes to, preference that using the word groomer is an anti-LGBTQ slur. And I would argue, regardless of what your sexuality is, anyone can be a groomer. And so we're targeting all of the things that are happening within our community that damages children. And that's going to be like drag queen story hour, which is hypersexualized content in front of children. We're also pushing back against gender ideology, which is forces children to go down a journey of chemical castration or seeking out surgeries to do these types of things to affirm these genders that they feel like. Our organization spends a heavy amount of time educating the public with information sessions, attending school board meetings, city council meetings. We have our voices heard in federal legislatures and state legislation, and to be able to combat a lot of these things. Our organization is filled with so many people that have the same vision for our community, wanting to be accountable for the things that our community is doing and fixing it, which is why all of us identify or fall under the LGBT umbrella. So being anti ourselves is never something that is in our mission. Our mission is to save children from the indoctrination that's happening through our umbrella.
That's pretty well. I brought, obviously we have Jed here from the great Jedediah Bila live show, and we got the Biz Doc in the house as well. Both of you are parents. You have Hartley. You got Bailey and Brooke. I got my set of kids as well. This is something that's very important to all of us as parents. It is a concern. I do want to play this clip of what got my attention, of what you were talking about. And some of you who follow the podcast closely, you saw this clip a couple months back. If you want to play this, maybe the first 2 minutes would be great.
Every teacher that has a pride flag in their classroom should be fired and arrested. The gay flag is a sexual flag. It represents nothing other than sexual things. Gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender, and questioning. What business is it of anyone on this board of what children would like to do with other children? It is none of your business. It is between them and their parents. But however, you guys want to illegally survey your students. My name is Frank Rodriguez. I'm the Executive Director of Operations for Gays Against Groomers. I'm a 31-year-old gay man pushing back against the agenda that's happening within our classrooms. Keeping parents away from this discussion is absolutely severing the relationship between a child and their parent. My community is not discriminated against anymore. Shockingly enough, we succeeded. Now you're sending out surveys that's asking students what their gender is, what their pronouns are, and whether or not you should be telling their parents. Could you imagine if my son or one of yours went to school and said, "Hey, I'm gay," and you never knew? All of you up here are pretty intelligent. You have doctorate degrees, you're educated, and you lead this district. But yet, you turn a blind eye with the sexual things that happen in your classroom. I refuse to believe that any of you think that that's appropriate. Because if you think that that is appropriate, you would be a predator. There's images that are going to be displayed today for you to see of a child sucking another child off. And that's in your classrooms. I shake because it makes me uncomfortable to even utter those words to you. This is nothing about inclusion. It is nothing about respect to my community. I say with you with 100% truth, according to the Center of Disease Control, that the reason my community faces such issues in this world has absolutely nothing to do with the straight people on this planet. It has everything to do with the drugs that we digest, has everything to do with our access to health care. The number one reason my community has so many mental health issues is because they don't have access to health care. And that's directly from the CDC. It is not slurs, it's not gay bashing. We don't have access to therapy. If you really want to help the LGBTQ community to feel really accepted in this world, embrace that people have mental health issues and they should seek help. Having a classroom without the American flag in it is a disgrace to this country. If this country wasn't here, millions of people around the world would perish. And that flag, this flag, should be held high by every single student.
So, question, when you gave that speech, I saw it, I couldn't believe it. You can always judge, who is an enemy based on who reacts to this and who pushes back and saying, I can't believe he said this. What a speech. This is ridiculous. He's such a this, he's such a that. Who pushed back on your speech? Who came back and said, Crank, you don't know what you're talking about?
So the main people that pushed back against this was going to be my community, the LGBT community. They're very vocal in this, the far left, when it comes to these types of things, the woke side of this. And then also a lot of woke women also push back on this. I think when it comes to my community, the gay community, when we point out these things that really need help, such as our mental health issues or our drug addiction rates, no one wants to talk about these things. They want to brush those under the rug. But the moment you get someone like Huntington Beach wanting to just fly the American flag at their facilities, they get uproared, they get angry, they get mad. But no one fights for the things that we actually need. And so that's why I'm really glad that this speech that I say that shook the world actually opened the eyes to a lot of people, because there are things that my community needs. And unfortunately, they're pushing back on it.
Jed, your reaction when you're hearing something like this as a parent, what are your thoughts about this?
Yeah, as a parent and somebody who used to work in schools, this is, to me, a deeply anti-parental rights movement. And the school really wants to get in the way of the relationship between parents and their children. And you have guidance counselors now, I'm sure you know, that are being told by administration, keep it confidential, don't make phone calls home to parents. You need to make sure these kids are protected. And they present it as a guide of protection, essentially, against their own parents. So you have kids being turned against their parents in many respects, and they feel like the parents are the enemy. They no longer speak to their parents. It breaks down the lines of communication, which essentially enables, indoctrination on many levels then. Then you have students in oftentimes left-wing institutions. They're not communicating with their parents, and larger issues begin to, be received in terms of the indoctrination that we see in schools. I think it's interesting, though, when I heard you talk about the American flag, that had to be such an enormous trigger for these people, because a lot of the people who are battling against what you're doing are also battling what this country represents, everything this country represents. And I think them hearing you say that about the American flag, the response, the trigger reaction is, well, there's people who don't like the American flag. So, what is your point about there's people that, why can't we take the American flag down? Why is the American flag held to a different standard than an LGBTQ flag? So I'm sure that they felt incredibly triggered by that remark, because not only do they have a deep resentment of this country and a deep resentment of everything it stands for, but they want to correlate what you're saying is true, a representation of sexuality, and a representation of just this country, the values of liberty, the values of freedom, and whatnot. So I think that's where you drove these people to insanity. Just the reference of the American flag itself will make them nuts. So, and thanks for doing what you're doing, because, if nothing else, you're speaking out, and I'm sure you get, I can't even imagine what comes your way from the woke community. So good for you, man.
Thank you.
I'm looking at this article, What is Sexual Grooming? This is an article from 2017. I don't know if you have this or not. It's not a newer article. It's 6 years old. 7 things to know about this abuse tactic, okay? Number 1, anyone can be a victim, okay? It often starts with friendship. Got it. Perpetrators use favors and promises to build trust. Makes sense. 5, grooming can be difficult to distinguish. Secrecy is a common characteristic of grooming, which is number 4. Number 5 is grooming can be difficult to distinguish from romance. Victims can get out. Family members and friends can help, but it's important for them to tread carefully. So this topic of grooming, I watched Vice do the documentary they did 2 weeks ago. I don't know if you saw that or not, from a couple of weeks ago when it came out. Did you see the?
I don't think so.
Okay,
no.
It's not really a documentary. It's just a clip they put on their channel. If you can go to it, I just send it to you on your, right there. So this whole thing that came out, transphobic influencers are driving a violent groomer conspiracy. Okay, so we don't need to play this clip, but if you play it, you guys are in it, Matt Walsh is in it, Rogan's in it. A lot of people are in it that they're pushing back. I'm sure you saw this, Jed,
I did see
on what they're doing. Okay, so the argument of this video is there is no such thing as groomers. Okay, cool, no problem. Now play what just came out from Project Veritas. That one you can actually play from 2 days ago, which I'm sure you guys have seen. If you've not seen it, this is from 2 days ago, okay? And this is what parents are concerned about, right? When this reverend, I think it's called the reverend of, what is the organization called? I think it's called
it's out in California.
Landslide something, Rob, I texted it to you if you want to look at it. It's an Instagram video. It says, breaking groomers, Reverend Casey Martinez, how they do what they do. If you just look at your text, you'll see that I send it to you.
It's Loomis Basin Congregation of the United Church of Christ, Casey Martinez Tinnen. That's the guy who was.
Very disturbing to see what this guy's saying in the interview. Do you see it? I'll just put a thumbs up so you see it. I think I texted to you like literally 8:39. If you look up 8:39, send it to you right there. Put a thumbs up on it. And you see, have you taken a look at this interview yet, Tom, or no?
No.
I want you to listen to this. If you can zoom in a little bit so the audience can see it, there you go. And refresh it so we can watch it from the beginning. Perfect. There we go. Audio.
In my mind, how communities thrive is through intergenerational relations. So I am.
Try to refresh and get the audio at the same time and pause it so I can just read just press the button so it doesn't play. I know we're like this close to having parents freaking the F out is how he opens it up. Then play it.
This close to having parents wreaking. In my mind, how communities thrive is through intergenerational relations. So I and the older queer folks are mentoring these young adults. Have you talked to your kids about puberty? Have you considered blockers?
How critical is it, do you think,
Critical.
to get them when they're young?
Critical. We used to meet at the church because it was free, and kids would say they're going to youth group. We moved to the library because kids said they were meeting their friends at the library.
Wow.
So it's not lying, but it's not fully the truth. When they know that their queer kid is coming to me for support, they're going to be upset. It's when you are purposely misgendering them, when you are purposely not using their name.
How do you handle that?
I call CPS.
But that's your standard protocol.
If we want these kids to thrive and survive, we must get to their parents first.
Meet Reverend Casey Tinnen of Loomis Basin Congregational Church in Loomis, California. Casey is also the founder of The Landing Spot, a nonprofit community center meant to create, quote, a safe, supportive, and empowering space for LGBTQIA plus youth and their families.
Pause it.
A project.
It's stuff like this that parents see, and Vice 1 minute is saying no one's doing this. The word conspiracy, it's a conspiracy theorist, groomers, all this other stuff. Then you see this and they say, okay, Vice, why don't you now do something like Project Veritas is doing and really find out for us from both sides whether this is happening or not. What's your reaction when you see something like this?
Grooming's happen in many forms. It's not just sexual grooming. When you think of grooming, anytime you take a child away from a parent and teach them something that it goes against the parent's beliefs, you are grooming that child into your ideologies, your beliefs, and the way that you want that child to be, regardless if that's going to be sexual, religious, or any other political ways that you think that that child should be. Grooming is happening in so many different capacities, and that's why Gays Against Groomers is making such headway in this, because we're breaking barriers and destroying that the woke agenda has formed to be able to captive these children against their parents. Like we were saying earlier, if like in this video where they say that, children might, commit suicidality or something like that, having parents involved in that child's experience from day one, from when they're born until the parents are gone, is vital to the success of that person. And that's vital for my community. If we don't have our parents involved in the decisions that we're making, you're setting up that child to have 40% higher drug addiction rates, 25% to be able to commit suicide, and just going down a journey that is not supported on their own. They need their parents. And so like this video saying he can't go to the parents, that's deeply disturbing, because if a child has questions about who they are or the journey they want to take in their life, the number one people that can handle this conversation are the parents.
I mean, they can't indoctrinate the kids, though, unless they remove the parents. It's integral.
Yeah.
So, I mean, what that guy sitting and saying, a reverend no less, sitting and outright encouraging lying, saying, lie to your parents. He says, well, it's not lying, but of course it's lying, and saying that he's going to call Child Protective Services on parents for misgendering the kids. I mean, he's now making a decision. He's deciding to play parent. He's removed those parents from the equation. He said, you don't matter. You're a hazard to your own children. He's made that decision. And now he said, well, I'm going to do a better job. The state essentially is going to do a better job of raising your kids than you are. And it's such an integral step, because if you had parents involved, you would have pushback. So what's interesting is that for years, we've had indoctrination of kids, years and years and years. And that, you're right, that has been grooming. And, a lot of conservatives have pushed back on that for years. But something different happened here when it applied to this stuff related to sexuality. That word groomer, because that word was used before. I've been using that word, they're grooming kids in schools, for years. But there wasn't this type of pushback. Why do you think now, when it came to sexuality, why such a pushback to the point where you've gotten banned? I'm sure we'll talk about that, where that word was banned on Twitter, where you couldn't talk about something. There is something deeply sinister going on with this agenda as it relates to children. And I don't know if there's a lot of money to be made by pharma. I don't know if a lot of institutions are connected, but there's something different going on that goes above and beyond just traditional indoctrination in schools, that they are responding to you the way that they are. What do you think that is?
Yeah, so I talk about this a lot in my community. You kind of see it from this gentleman here who obviously is gay. The time that we grew up, there was definitely a time where we were suppressed. We were, attacked for just simply being who we were. And I'm a firm believer that a majority of my community has not overcome that closet trauma. And now they're projecting that onto these kids, and they're suffering the consequences of this. And so you see that in the statistics, like, 60% of my community not getting access to mental health care. And so pairing that with what we're seeing today, a lot of the people like this gentleman here, I hate to say, is probably dealing with some sort of mental health issue that he has not overcome. And now we're projecting this onto kids as if it's going to help them, and it's not. We're seeing damage. We're seeing kids, seeking out gender-affirming surgeries and coming back and saying that they don't want to transition because of behaviors like this.
So if you like this clip and you want to watch another one, click right here. And if you want to watch the entire podcast, click right here.